Hello, and welcome to Nerd Hack. Now, before I begin this chapter, I'd like to provide a public service announcement. You see, I have never been a big believer in the supernatural. Although I write fantasy and sci-fi novels, I have a hard time believing in magic and curses in the real world. I have just never seen any real evidence of it. However, with that said, I must tell you this. If a gypsy ever threatens you with a terrible curse if you piss on her begonias, believe that. Now, it isn't as bad as it looks. I mean, sure, I'm a dog. But it isn't like this will last forever. From my research, the best estimates say the curse will run its course in about 20 years. Let's see, the average age of a dog is... And I'm currently... Oh no. Oh no! Oh well, at least now I have an excuse to take random naps throughout the day. The vet charges a lot less than my old doctor did. And I have a ready-made excuse to do my business wherever I choose. Just wait till that gypsy sees what I do to her prize-winning petunias. Anywho, let's get this show on the road. This chapter's title is The Cat Who Defied a King. A little overly dramatic, I must admit. However, what I'm really going to do is compare two different styles of writing and use two accomplished authors to illustrate each approach. The first is Save the Cat by Blake Snyder. The second is On Writing by Stephen King. Now, for those who are familiar with these works, this may seem like comparing apples to oranges. Blake Snyder was an accomplished screenplay author whose craft demands the rapid and efficient production of screenplays if you want to keep income coming in and your bills paid. As such, his approach is very businesslike, with little room left for crafting works on a whim and a dream. Stephen King, on the other hand, writes novels and, with his well-established list of bestsellers, he can afford to write at his own pace on whatever subject and whatever genre he chooses, although we all know what genre he gravitates towards. Even so, at his peak, Stephen King kept up a pace of 2,000 words a day, generating the completed first draft of a novel every 3 months, a very enviable rate of productivity by anyone's standards. Still, despite the different markets for which each author wrote, each is an excellent example of two schools of thought on writing, pantsers and planners. The term pantsers probably requires a bit of explanation. The colloquialism refers to authors who typically write by the seat of their pants. This does not mean these types of authors don't research. Many engage in months of background data collection before they set down to write word one. But once that first word hits the page, these types of authors tend to wander wherever the story leads. Personally, I prefer the term organic writer, as it speaks more to how I view this style of writing and avoids the whole mandatory wardrobe implications. Wouldn't want to leave out those who prefer to write au naturel, shall we say. Moving on. Planners is a self-explanatory term. In this category are authors who do not commit a single thought or word to paper until they have a set idea of the story as a whole. Every character is defined, every twist in the plot laid out and understood. This is a very orderly and calculated way to write, and one can easily see how this method leads to solid results with fewer rewrites. Now, I am not going to try to state which of these methods is better. What I would like to do is give a brief overview of each of these two books on writing, present my impression of each author's methods, with pluses and minuses for each technique. Lastly, I will explain how each has influenced how I approach the art of writing, and give a brief explanation of where my style aligns with these two methodologies. Sound good? Everyone nice and comfy? Got a cup of tea, a mug of coffee, or a large energy drink? Very good. For those so inclined, take your nose doze now, and off we go! Save the Cat. Excuse me. As I was saying, Blake Snyder's work is billed as the last book on screenplay writing you'll ever need, and it may very well be at that. Mr. Snyder was an accomplished author of many blockbuster screenplays, including Blank Check and Stop or My Mom Will Shoot. His preferred genre was PG, family-friendly movies, and he certainly knew his market. His approach to writing was highly structured, demanding the author to take several steps before writing word one. This is to ensure that the concept behind the budding screenplay is not only solid, but marketable in the Hollywood sense. Considering the number of works he sold for millions of dollars on spec, it's certainly hard to argue with his approach. Before the first paragraph, sentence, word, or even chapter 1 was typed out, Blake Snyder insists the author generate a logline. For For those unfamiliar with this term, a logline is the one-sentence pitch for the film, such as, a young man is transported to the past, where he must reunite his parents before he and his future cease to exist. Back to the Future. An average waitress living an average life discovers an assassin from the future is out to murder her before she can give birth to the savior of humanity. Terminator. Next, going by the Blake Snyder system, you should check your logline contains a few vital elements, such as irony, a compelling mental image, main character, antagonist, a primal need, and a killer title. In short, the logline should tell you everything you need to know about the movie in one brief sentence. You should then pitch this to as many people as you can, gauging their response. If it seems like people lose interest, start gazing off in the distance, fidgeting as you lay out your pitch. Something is wrong with your logline, and most likely your story. It's back to the drawing board for you, reimagining your story, crafting a new logline, and re-pitching your new creation to a fresh audience until the only response you get from the victim is, "Tell me more." Alright, you got that done? Ready to write your story? Put that pen down. Next step is to nail down the genre of your budding saga. Is it a monster in the house story? A golden fleece tale, perhaps? Or maybe it is a why done it. He argues nobody cares who did it. We only care why they did it. Next, who is your protagonist? What is their age, their occupation? Will your film have appeal to the widest range of demographics? Will this be a special effects intense thrill ride or a block movie, one that takes place in a typical neighborhood that can be filmed in the production company's backlot? All this would help an executive forecast what actors they might choose, how much your cinematic masterpiece will cost to film, and its likelihood of financial success in the widest range of demographics. Finally, you need to beat it out, as Blake Snyder would say. Using his patented beat sheet, you create a rough outline of your story in the 3-act format, defining each scene, the inciting incident, the breaks into each act, the halfway point, when the bad guys close in, the dark night of the soul, all leading up to that final scene defining how much your protagonist has changed from that opening shot. Don't worry, Blake Snyder defines all of this in his book in thoroughly engaging ways, providing such excellent tools as the signature beat sheet and ultimately the index card-laden board. He even lays out some great rules for story writing, from explaining how to make your protagonist relatable to the audience through the Save the Cat rule, handling exposition in an engrossing manner through the law of the Pope in the pool, and avoiding overloading the audience with too much mumbo-jumbo. Only now, with all this accomplished, can you type out those enticing words, fade in, scene 1. Quite a lot to do before crafting that first draft. Blake Snyder is, in my opinion, the definition of a planner, and the benefits of laying such groundwork ahead of time are quite clear, resulting in efficient writing with tight, well-crafted plots. What's more, there are versions of the Save the Cat system out there with Blake Snyder's method tweaked especially for the writing of novels. However, if you're interested in learning his system, I'd advise you start with his original tone. It is an entertaining read that you can learn a great deal from if you're writing screenplays, novels, or even short stories. Now, let's look at someone with a more spontaneous outlook on writing, a pantser, or an organic writer as I would call him. In 2000, Stephen King first published On Writing, a book that is as much an autobiography as it is his dissertation on writing. For more than half the novel, Mr. King recounts his experiences as a young boy growing up with his brother, children of a single mom at a time when single motherhood was not the norm. His tales are often poignant as he suffered much during his youth, both due to chronic ailments and at the hands of the many babysitters his mother hired to watch over he and his sibling while she worked. You truly get an understanding of how he gained such insight into the human soul, given all he experienced in those formative years. One of my favorite moments in On Writing is where Stephen King lays out his method for crafting stories, using the analogy of uncovering bones like an archaeologist. Unlike Blake Snyder, where a logline, beat sheet, and 3-act board must be created before any writing begins, Stephen King starts with a premise, or an event that is ongoing. He then places his characters in that world and he begins his excavation, uncovering the bones of the story as a narrative unfolds, letting his characters flesh themselves out through the choices they make and the resulting effects they have on the world around them. It is in this portion of the book that Mr. King sets up his only writing assignment, laying the groundwork for a suspenseful yarn, inviting the reader to run with it and find out what bones they uncover as they unfold the drama in their own way. Stephen King even invites the reader to send in their final manuscript to him, not promising to read them all, but to do his best. Of course, Mr. King clearly did not anticipate the reaction this would get to, and should you choose to attempt to submit your own creation, you will receive a polite but firm refusal. I know this, as his work inspired me to write my own short story, The Blue Mug, one of the darkest stories I've ever written. Yet, even with this website's refusal to accept my little manuscript, I have no regrets in writing it, and I am indebted to Stephen King for providing me with the inspiration to generate my own horrid little nightmare. In this wonderful book, Stephen King also provides some stellar advice for building your basic writing skills, describing each jewel of knowledge he provides as a tool to be added to the writer's toolbox. And yet he goes further than mere grammatical mechanics and uses the pain and tribulations of his own life to illustrate the balance of work and life one must strike to remain happy and sane. Considering all he has been through, this man knows what he is talking about. This novel is an excellent read throughout, and I would highly recommend it to any budding author. In fact, the earlier the better, as when he presents his scheme for becoming a published author, I find myself on the wrong side of the age range such a plan requires. Nevertheless, I receive his advice in the spirit with which it is given and feel myself all the richer for it. I think you will too. And so we come to my writing style and where it falls between these two giants. While I cannot say I follow either author's path religiously, I certainly see the wisdom in Blake Snyder's methods, although I cannot say I agree with every lesson he teaches. A good example would be where he says a hero must never question, always have the answers. I respectfully disagree, as I feel there is a great value in the audience learning along with the hero as they explore the new world they are thrust into. Although I must admit that he was an accomplished screenplay author, whereas I am but a humble self-published nerd. So certainly, take my criticism with a grain of salt. Beyond that, I do feel there is far too much pre-planning in his method for my liking. Although I always have the beginning and ending of my novels firmly in my mind when I begin, I could never map out every single twist and turn before I start writing. To me, this is just too stifling, taking all the fun out of the craft. After all, I'm going on this adventure along with my characters, learning along with them as every new marvel is unveiled. Like any journey, I want to know what the end goal is, and have a vague idea of when we will arrive and what treasures or punishment awaits us. But it is the surprises along the way that make the journey worthwhile. And if I can't wait to discover what is around the next turn in the path, I have a reasonable hope my readers will likewise be eager to continue. So we come to Stephen King's method. The man is amazing, and I found his approach to the organic method of writing inspirational. But when setting out on the road to create a full-size novel or series, his technique becomes terrifying, pun slightly intended. To start out with nothing to guide me but a vague idea of the situation leaves incredible amounts of freedom. Too much freedom, in fact. Like floating in a vast vacuum with only a glimpse of light off in the distance, I fear I would never reach a satisfying goal, and even if I do, few would be willing to follow me, save my closest friends and family maybe. Stephen King truly has an astonishing intellect, and it is small wonder he can deliver masterworks at the pace that he can. But I humbly admit I am no Stephen King. I need more guidance than this. So, before I begin, I always create a timeline. Nothing ornate, mind you, something like the map Bilbo was given in the beginning of The Hobbit. A simple line at best, with the Shire at one end and the Lonely Mountain at the other. All the twists and turns, all the glories and pitfalls in between, cannot be found on that map. They must be discovered on that road by embarking on the adventure and seeing it through. And when all is said and done, my finished work rarely follows the original sketched out plan. But those changes that unfold as the story progresses are the very reason I write in the first place. This is what brings me back time and time again, eager to see what will happen next, to see what is around the next corner in the trail, closing in on that final scene. And I can only hope that my audience will be as eager to follow the trail I leave behind as I was to blaze it. So there you have it. My exploration of two novels on writing and the differing approaches to creating fictional stories each represents. I hope you enjoyed this chapter, and if I piqued your interest, you might pick up one or both novels and give them a read. Both are currently available on Audible, and are narrated exceedingly well. This is a great option for those as pressed for time as I, as you can listen to so many great works while commuting to and from work, or while mowing the lawn. I wish I could offer some wonderful promotional code here, but since I have no sponsors, all advertisement I do is strictly because I love the product. Ah, the honesty of the pauper author. So, please join me next time for an examination of Starship Troopers, in their various forms. Until then, remember, Klaatu, Barada, necktie, nectar, nickel, noodle. It's an N-word. It's definitely an N-word. Never mind. Until then, hit the subscribe button and get ready for some serious nerd-splaining. See you next time.